So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Nights the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I am reviewing the final DCEU film, which is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you have been watching this podcast on YouTube, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, you can look, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there, as you podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Yes, you can watch this podcast on YouTube at Night of the Movies on that platform. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast, of course, and please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? Let's get into my review of the final DCEU film, which is, of course, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So, as I've already said, this is the final DCEU film. The DCEU has consisted of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Wonder Woman 1984, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Black Adam, Birds of Prey, Suicide Squad, and then The Suicide Squad, The Flash, and the first Aquaman, which came out in 2018. And this is a direct sequel to that first Aquaman and a conclusion to the DCEU. Although you shouldn't really see it as a conclusion to the DCEU, because it wasn't made as a conclusion to the DCEU. I mean, DC films will be continuing like this, the big budget DC movies will be continuing like this in 2025, but they will have no connection to the likes of Aquaman or The Flash or, Shazam and that sort of stuff. They're going to be completely new, starting with Superman Legacy in 2025. I think Joker 2 is coming out next year, but Joker 2 is elsewhere. It's got no connection to the DC movies, the big budget DC movies that have been coming out over the past decade. So yes, this is the final DCEU film with Jason Momoa playing Aquaman once again. He played Aquaman in the first Aquaman film, which came out in 2018, and he returns to play Aquaman in this film alongside Patrick Wilson, who returns as Aquaman's half-brother Orm. Nicole Kidman's back in this film, Amber Heard's back, Dolph Lundgren, he's back as well. He's got many of the same cast members. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who played Black Mantis in the first Aquaman, he's back as the main villain in this film. He played a sort of side villain in the first one. He's the main villain in this film. You have James Wan directing again. He directed the first Aquaman. He also directed such other famous films as Saw. One of his more recent films was Malignant, the horror film, which I just watched recently on Halloween, by the way. That film I did not like whatsoever. I thought James Wan's last film before directing this was not very good. But he's back directing this one. He directed the first Aquaman. And so, yeah. And so, yes, you have many of the same people returning returning behind the camera and in front of the camera for the Aquaman sequel. However, according to reports, and these are reports from Variety, a reputable news source, according to Variety, the production of this film was riddled with problems. There were test screenings that went down horribly, and I mean really bad, according to Variety again. There were 3 rounds of reshoots with James Gunn's input on the 3rd round of reshoots, and if you don't know who James Gunn is, he directed all 3 Guardians of the Galaxy films. He also directed The Suicide Squad, which came out in 2021, and apparently he's now going to be the co-head of DC going forward in 2025. So yes, he has now come into DC, and apparently he had some input into the 3rd round of reshoots for this movie, for Aquaman 2. And those 3 rounds of reshoots, by the way, it's not unheard of for a film to have a round of reshoots, like to have some reshoots, but for 3 rounds of reshoots, that's saying something. And then you get the whole Amber Heard side of everything, which I'm not going to get into. I'm not going to get into all the Amber Heard stuff really in this review, but there was a big thing that happened behind the scenes. Like, apparently Amber Heard had a much bigger part in the original script of the film that was significantly cut down because of all the court case stuff with Johnny Depp. And on top of all that, this film has been delayed, I think, at least 3 times. Maybe more. I'm pretty sure it was meant to release last Christmas. Or the Christmas before that even. I'm not entirely sure, but it's been delayed quite a few times. So there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes issues with this film. Nevertheless, it is here though. It is out in cinemas, and I have already seen it. I went to go watch it earlier today. I'm reviewing this in the evening right now, which is why the rest of my room behind me is all darkly lit, because I'm recording this in the evening, which is the only time I have to record this podcast today. But yes, I saw the film earlier today, and it once again follows Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Once again follows the story of Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman, once again played by Jason Momoa, as he now has his own son. He is now a father. Yes, Aquaman is a dad, and he is trying to juggle between being a father and being the king of Atlantis at the same time. However, Black Mantis, who was in the first Aquaman film, is back here, and he wants revenge after Aquaman killed Black Mantis' father, after Aquaman killed his father. And so he's going to do whatever he can to take down Aquaman. And people are hearing that he's back. The people of Atlantis are hearing that Black Mantis, is it? Yeah, Black Mantis, whatever. People are hearing that this villain is back. And so Aquaman has to go and find his brother, his half-brother, who tried to kill him in the first film, and they team up to try and take down Black Mantis before it's too late. However, things get complicated when all this stuff to do with the Lost Kingdom gets introduced into the latter stages of the film. And that's pretty much all you need to know about the quote-unquote plot for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom before seeing this film. I mean, my plot synopsis just then was quite incohesive, and it feels like that when you're watching the film. It's a very convoluted plot. I didn't explain it very well, but that doesn't matter because the film doesn't explain it very well either. Honestly, this film is fine. It's not terrible. It has its moments, but it completely falls apart in its second half, and it's not nearly as exciting or as engaging as it should be. And I'm someone who actually quite enjoyed that first Aquaman movie. I mean, I've only really seen it twice. I saw it the first time in the cinema. I enjoyed it then, although it may have been because I was in a good mood, because it was, it was getting close to Christmas back then. The first one came out Christmas 2018, and maybe that's why I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, because I was in the Christmas spirit. Although, I did rewatch it on TV not too long ago, and I don't remember disliking it, though. I don't remember disliking it when I rewatched it on a smaller screen. So, I don't know. I like that first Aquaman movie. I think it's a lot of fun. And I think the first half of this film is fun to watch. It's got a lot of things going for it. But then the rest of the film, the second half becomes convoluted, and the plotting gets all over the place, and the film becomes really messy and the slog to sit through. The final big battle in this film is one big over-bloated CGI mishmash of all these different things going on. And somebody's got the trident, then someone else got his trident, then someone else got a trident, then someone else got a trident, and it got to the point where I was like, can we just end this battle that is taking place? Get to the end, and so I can go and leave this cinema. That's what I felt like in the final stages of this film. It just goes on and on at the end. It really just goes on and on. And the thing is, the film has some good parts to it. As already spoken about, I enjoyed the first half. Well, as I already said, I enjoyed the first half of the film. Jason Momoa as Aquaman is doing his very best to add some energy and to add some excitement into this film. I love Jason Momoa. I think he's just wonderful. I love seeing him on the press circuit when he does press for these films. I loved him when he, I loved him with his appearance on Graham Norton. I thought he was the best part of Fast X, which came out, was it this year or the year before? I can't remember now. It's been a long year, but I really liked him in Fast X. He was in another film that I really liked him in too. Anyway, yeah, I really like Jason Momoa. I think he's done a great job playing Aquaman overall in the DCEU, and he does a great job playing Aquaman here. He's got so much charisma and he's got so much charm to him in this film that you just can't help but enjoy yourself. I mean, I can help enjoy myself when I was watching Jason Momoa play Aquaman. He's trying his best to add something into this film, and he carries so much of it. In fact, it got to the point where I didn't care about any part of the film that didn't include Jason Momoa's Aquaman. He's just splendid to watch in this film. He's absolutely wonderful whenever he's on screen, and he makes a lot of moments funny as well. And I think it helps that a lot of this film focuses on this brotherly relationship between Aquaman and his half-brother Orm, who tried to kill him in the first film. He was the main antagonist of the first Aquaman. They're here and they're doing a lot of these adventures together. They're going on the main adventures together in this film. And there's this chalk and cheese relationship to them, which really works for me. It really works for me, and it was really focused on well in the first half of the film. When Orm is introduced, the whole chalk and cheese relationship between them two, I was enjoying. There's a joke about the fact that Orm doesn't know how to run at one point, and he does this quite funny run which made me laugh far more than expected to. A joke about Orm eating cockroaches, which again made me laugh more than I expected to. You can just hear the doorbell going again there. Also, there was a joke about kings building bridges, yeah, there's a lot of good jokes in this film between them two, in my opinion. A lot of moments which made me laugh, and I liked that relationship. Also, I liked how this film focused on the father and son relationships, not only in the relationship between Aquaman and his new son, but also in the relationship between Aquaman and his father, played by Temuera Morrison, who is Boba Fett in the Star Wars universe, who plays Boba Fett in the Star Wars universe. I liked how this film focused on that. I thought that was a really sweet idea to do, and it's focused on well again in the first half of the film. I'm not quite sure what happened to Aquaman's father at the end, because at one point it's suggested that, well, I'm not going to say what happens, but it's suggested at one point that something's happened to him, and then the end suggests otherwise. Let's just say that. But anyway, I still like the fact that the film focuses a lot on the film. I still liked how the film, it doesn't focus a lot on it, but I still liked how the film focused on the relationship between Aquaman and his father, and Aquaman and his relationship with his son. I liked that. Amber Heard, controversy aside, whether you like or not, she is in this film. She is in this film, and actually she was in it more than I expected her to be, and I thought she was okay in the film. She didn't bother me that much. Funny enough, I actually thought she gave a better performance than Nicole Kidman in this film. Nicole Kidman felt like she was phoning it in. It felt like Nicole Kidman signed up for 2 Aquaman films and regretted it when she was on production of the second film. It really felt like that. Felt like she regretted it after watching the first Aquaman film, but she was signed on to this one, so she did. But, I felt that she was phoning it in. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen II playing the villain does his best, but I don't think he has that much to play around with that's really interesting or exciting in any means. But anyway, I think there were good parts in some of the performances. I liked the relationship between Aquaman and his brother, and Aquaman and his father and his son. Also, I really liked some of the creature designs and some of the character designs. One of the big things I liked about both Aquaman films, this one and the first Aquaman film, is how you get all of these different characters that basically sea creatures that can talk. At one point, we meet these pirates in the film, which are hammerhead sharks, and I really like that. There's a section of the film where Aquaman is riding this huge seahorse into battle, and I really liked that. I like those sort of things which you wouldn't really see in any other films. And there's also John Rhys Davies, who many people might know as Gimli, and as Gimli in the Lord of the Rings films and Salah in the Indiana Jones films. He voices a giant talking crab in this film, which I quite liked. And I liked all that creature stuff. I like all the creature designs and some of the character designs in the film. I thought they worked well. And I also like how there's this octopus that follows Aqauman on and helps Aqauman on his journey throughout the first half of the film. I really liked that. The octopus seems to be forgotten about in the second half of the film. I was waiting for the octopus to come back. I was like, where's an octopus? Bring it back. That was one of the best parts of the first half. And it may have been the second half, but it got to the point where I became so unengaged and so uninterested in what's going on that I can't remember anymore. But I liked the octopus in the first half. There is things to admire about this film, for certain. But as I've already mentioned, at least I think I've already mentioned this, my head is all over the place right now, but as I've already mentioned, the film, when it gets into all this stuff with the Lost Kingdom, it becomes so convoluted and messy and so uninteresting. I was sat there and I didn't care about any of the things with the Lost Kingdom because it was introduced. It wasn't introduced so properly like the second half of the film, and then by the time it was introduced, I was like, what? Why are you introducing this here? This seems like quite a big thing, quite a big part of this film. In fact, the Lost Kingdom isn't the title of this film, and it's not properly talked about. It's not properly explained until the second half. And by that point, I was like, why should I care about this? I'm more interested in Aqauman and the relationships he's having with the men in his life. Why should I care about all this stuff to do with the Lost Kingdom? And the film didn't really give me a reason to care. You know, it's connected with Black Mantis' storyline, but I found that storyline incredibly dull in this film from the get-go. I really found his storyline dull and unengaging. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who played Black Mantis, is doing his best job, but the character, and I enjoyed the character in the first Aquaman film. He wasn't in it loads, but I enjoyed that character in the first film. The character in this film, though, is just, I don't know, it feels like he's there for the sake of being there. Randall Park was also quite annoying. You know, I did not really like him in this in the villain storyline. And going back onto this whole thing to do with the Lost Kingdom, it becomes really, and I hate using this word, but it becomes really boring to watch. It becomes really boring to watch all the stuff to do with the Lost Kingdom because a lot of it visually looked in part like Mordor from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I was sat there thinking, oh, so James Wan, you know, the director of the film, may be doing this to pay homage to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and to show his love for that trilogy. And so on the one side, I understand that, because the Lord of the Rings trilogy is so influential. But the other half of me is going, this is just reminding me how much better the Lord of the Rings trilogy is, though. How much more visually stunning that trilogy is, even though it's, 20 years old now. You know, I was sat there going, I understand he's trying to emulate Lord of the Rings. I understand he's trying to emulate Mordor here, at least I'm guessing he is, but it's just not working for me. There's even a Sauron lookalike at one point. Like, the big main villain behind the scenes who's kind of operating everything, although isn't really, I can't explain it. I don't think the film explains it particularly well either, but the main villain who Black Mantis is trying to get to is a Sauron lookalike. He may as well be Sauron from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I was sat there going, I mean, really? Really, we're doing that? yeah, it feels at times like it wants to be Lord of the Rings. This film feels like it wants to be Lord of the Rings, to the point that you even have a Lord of the Rings actor voicing one of the main supporting characters of this film. You have John Rhys-Davies, who played Gimli, not arguably actually, my favourite character of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, voicing one of the characters in this film. It's like, really? Really we're doing that? Okay. It just feels like it's trying to be Lord of the Rings too much. And also it feels like it's trying to be other movies at the same time. Like, there is a section of the film which looks like it's taking place on Pandora from the Avatar films. It got to the point where Aquaman and his brother got to this place into the film, got to this island, got to this location, and I was looking at the scenery thinking, this is just Pandora, and some of the colours were the same as Pandora from the Avatar films. I was like, oh, why? I don't understand what the creative decisions were behind this. And then I was also thinking, God, this just reminded me how much I really enjoyed Avatar: The Way of Water in the cinema last Christmas. And that leads me on to my next criticism. Avatar: The Way of Water has ruined, and I mean ruined, underwater sequences in big budget movies now. Because, say what you will about the Avatar films, love them, hate them, want to admire them, whatever, but one thing you cannot deny about the Avatar films is how visually stunning they are. And the underwater sequences in the second Avatar film, Avatar: The Way of Water, are absolutely mind-blowing to look at, because they're all CGI. The CGI characters under the water look so real. And the thing is, James Cameron, who made the Avatar films, has now ruined underwater sequences in other big-budget movies, because I felt similar about the Little Mermaid remake, which came out earlier this year. I didn't think the underwater sequences looked particularly great in that film, and I don't think they look particularly good in this film either, because you're looking at them, and I'm just thinking, yeah, Avatar: The Way of Water did the underwater sequences better. Not every film will have the same kind of budget that Avatar: The Way of Water had. That had a budget of something like $300 million, but this had a big budget too. This had a huge budget because of the reshoots, like somewhere around $250 million. And so it's not too far from Avatar: The Way of Water, and yet the underwater sequences look grainy and look like CGI. They don't look like you're actually underwater with these characters. If the film came out a couple of years ago, before Avatar: The Way of Water, I may have felt differently, but it didn't. It didn't come out a couple of years ago. Avatar: The Way of Water exists. It's been out for a year now. And I was watching the underwater sequences going, this doesn't hold a candle to Avatar: The Way of Water. And there's so many underwater sequences to the point that I couldn't tell what was an underwater sequence and what wasn't, because there's so much CGI in the film, so much obvious CGI at that it just, it's so in your face, and I just couldn't get past the amount of CGI that was used in this film. In fact, it got to the point where the CGI reminded me of the overly CGI look of the Star Wars prequels. You know, I've always kind of enjoyed the Star Wars prequels. I'm never going to say I fully enjoy those films because I've got some major problems with them, but I've always kind of enjoyed the Star Wars prequels because of how much they meant to me growing up, how much I loved them growing up. But watching them now, they have this weird, overly CGI look to them. And this film has that as well, and has some moments where it emulates Star Wars movies, but not in a good way, really. There's a character we meet in the film, voiced by Martin Short, who I love in Only Murders in the Building, but God knows what he's doing with the voice-over work in this film. But there's a character that we meet, this sea creature, who is a poor man's Jabba the Hutt. He is Jabba the Hutt in Atlantis. That's basically what he is. And when that part of the film happened, I was just sitting there going, what was the creative decision behind this? What were the creatives thinking here? I don't quite understand what their ideas were. And plus, you get on to the storytelling, which feels very much like a video game. The storytelling in this film feels very much like we're playing through a video game. We're going from one level to the next. We're going from the next location to the next. You know, it feels like we're Aquaman. It feels like it's a two-player video game. We're Aquaman and we're Aqauman and we're going from one level to the next. That's what it feels like. And I don't mean that in a good way. You know, people complained last year saying Avatar: The Way of Water felt like you were watching a video game. It felt like you were watching the cutscenes from a video game. No, this film feels like you're watching the cutscenes from a video game. It feels too much. The storytelling feels too much like we're playing through Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the game. It doesn't feel enough like you're experiencing a proper movie or that you are progressing through the narrative with these characters. It feels like you're progressing through the narrative of a video game, and I don't mean that in a good way. And so, in conclusion, the film drowns itself in having too much going on, way too much obvious CGI, whilst trying to emulate the better movies but becoming too convoluted at the same time, having an overcooked finale which is so annoying to watch and so alienating to watch at that goes on and on and on with so many moments that look fake and don't have enough substance to them. It's predictable, it's generic, and feels far too empty, even though it does have some sweet moments. You know, even though there are some sweet moments in this film, you know, like, there's some nice moments between Aquaman and Orm, his half-brother, and some sweet moments between Aquaman and his father, and Aquaman and his own son. Even though some sweet moments there, I was surprised by how empty the film felt, especially as it went on. I was surprised by how empty it felt and how predictable it was. I mean, all superhero movies are predictable, but this one got more and more predictable as it went on, to the point where I was like, yeah, I can see where all these pieces are going to fall together, and it feels generic in the end. And that's something I don't like to say about DC super movies in particular, where it doesn't really stand out amongst the pack. You know, I think it's better, I think it's far better than The Flash, which came out earlier this year, which, the more I think about The Flash, the more I hate it. I really hate that film. I think it's far better than The Flash, but I still feel that it doesn't stand out enough, though. It doesn't have a sense of authorship, a sense of a director's vision in there, and you can tell that the studios had their hands all over this film. I'm not going to say you can tell there's been 3 rounds of reshoots, because I couldn't. I couldn't tell there'd been so many reshoots and so many production problems with this film. Although, I could also tell that a studio's hands have been all over this movie. You know, studio executives' money-filled, grubby hands have been all over this film. Because it felt like it'd been through multiple edits. And every big budget movie has been through, the chances are they've been through multiple gazillion edits, but this one feels like we're on cut, I don't know, 28 of the film. And I want to go and see one of the original cuts. Although saying that, apparently one of the original cuts tested horribly, so I don't know if I would want to see that, I don't know. And one other thing I want to mention is that the ending of this film straight up rips off the ending of the first Iron Man. But it makes no sense, because everyone in the world, as far as I remember from other DCEU films, knows who Aquaman is. Still though, it's not terrible. Jason Momoa, who plays Aquaman, carries a lot of the film and makes it watchable. Patrick Wilson does a good job playing Orb, and I like the chemistry between them two and the brother bond between them two. The creature and character designs aren't bad, and, you know, there's something to look at, and I enjoyed most of the first half of the film. And I can see why people would enjoy it. I can see why families would go and watch it around the Christmas period and really get something out of it. And I watched in the cinema, that was about half full, and people were enjoying it. People were laughing at it. I laughed at a couple of jokes, I will admit, which is saying something for a superhero movie. Yeah, people were laughing at it in the cinema. People seem to be enjoying it in my cinema. I mean, not loads of people, but there were certain people who seem to be enjoying it more than I've heard people enjoy other superhero movies I watch in the cinema. Pardon me, over the past couple of years, but still, it just gets to the... I just got to the final stage of the film, and it felt like a slog. Again, not terrible, but not anything special either. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I'm going to say it's a 4 out of 10. I really wanted to love this film. I really did. I really wanted the DCEU to go out with a bang. Because I've enjoyed DCEU films. Like Shazam. Or Birds of Prey. Or Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't mind parts of Batman v Superman. There's another DCEU film that the Suicide Squad. I really enjoyed the Suicide Squad. Yeah, the point I'm making is... Oh, and the first Wonder Woman. Love that film. Love it. And the first Aquaman is really enjoyable in my opinion. And so I really wanted the DCEU to go out with a bang. But it just fizzles out. And I think it was telling that this film didn't even have a premiere, a red carpet premiere. When I heard that, I was like, wow. They're just trying to get this movie out. They don't care about it. Warner Brothers do not care about this film whatsoever. They're just trying to get it out, see what the result's going to be. Maybe it'll make some money, maybe it won't, but at least we might get something out of it. I don't know what. When I heard that, I was shocked. You know, I really was shocked. Again, it's not terrible. It has its moments. Jason Momoa carries a lot of the film, but it becomes overly convoluted. An overly big CGI mess. There's way too much CGI going on in the film. It feels generic. It feels far emptier than it should do, especially with some of the ideas that it has going on. It has some sweet moments between particular characters, and some of the performances aren't bad, but the villain storyline was so unengaging. Some of the filmmaking really is not that well done. I like the idea of Aquaman riding this giant seahorse. That was great, but the film didn't have enough of that in my opinion. And the underwater stuff just looked more unreal as it went on. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. And if you love it, if you really enjoyed it, that's great. I'm jealous and I'm so happy for you. But personally, I found it to be underwhelming. And I found that it drowned in how it was trying to do way too much. It's a really unfortunate and disappointing end to the DCEU. Anyway, it is what it is, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, although it has its moments, wasn't really for me. And so, all in all, as I already said, I'm going to say once more that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a 4 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed it, that's great. I'm really happy for you. But personally, I didn't. Still, I'm really happy for you though. And if you did enjoy it, please let me know why in the comment section below. And if you didn't enjoy it though, please let me know why too in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what people's thoughts are on this film. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And thank you very much for sticking with me today. You may notice my voice is a bit off today because I am not feeling well. I'm really struggling whilst recording this podcast. It's been a long day and I need to go to bed very soon. So yes, thank you for sticking with me. If you have managed to stick with me up to this point of the podcast. And as we said, thank you for watching or listening to the podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.